Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The air at ABC General Hospital had grown thick with a palpable tension, a cocktail of antiseptic, anxiety, and unspoken secrets that seemed to cling to the sterile walls. The weeks spanning late November into early December were never simple. They bridged the reflective gratitude of one holiday with the frantic anticipation of another, and this year, the emotional whiplash was more severe than ever. The forecast for the next 2 weeks promised not just medical emergencies, but a cascade of personal cataclysms that would leave no life in Port Charles untouched. The week of November 24th began not with a bang, but with the chilling echo of a slamming cell door. In a stark, unforgiving interrogation room, the fate of Jason Morgan hung in the balance. Detective John Crichton, his face a mask of weary determination, sat across from the man who was both a legend and a ghost. The evidence was circumstantial, a web of coincidence and planted clues, but it was a web strong enough to hold him. "We have a witness who places you at the docks, Morgan," Crichton stated, his voice flat. "The same docks where a man was found with a bullet matching the caliber of a weapon we know you favor." Jason's expression was, as ever, unreadable. "I wasn't there." "Your witness is mistaken or lying." His voice was a low rumble, devoid of panic. He had been in situations far more dire. But this was different. This wasn't a rival mobster in a dark alley, this was the system, and it was being manipulated by a shadow he couldn't yet see. Across town, Sam McCall paced the confines of her living room, her phone pressed to her ear. "Dante, you have to do something. This is a setup. You know it is." Her voice cracked with a mixture of fury and fear. Dante Falconeri, torn between his duty and his complicated history with Jason, sighed on the other end of the line. "Sam, I'm looking at everything. But the DA is under pressure. It's out of my hands. My advice? Get him the best lawyer you can. Not a mob lawyer. A real one." That lawyer would, of course, be Diane Miller, whose flamboyant entrance into the courtroom was always a spectacle. But even Diane was facing an uphill battle. The evidence, while flimsy, was persistent. And someone, somewhere, was pulling strings, ensuring the case against Jason had momentum. As Jason sat in his cell, his mind wasn't on the legal maneuvering. It was on his son, Danny, and on Sam. He knew this attack was a distraction, a move on a chessboard he was only beginning to comprehend. The real threat wasn't the Port Charles PD, it was the person who had orchestrated this, and their endgame remained terrifyingly opaque. While Jason's freedom was on the line, another life was hanging in the balance within the ICU. Harrison Chase, his body battered and his spirit seemingly broken, lay surrounded by the whirring and beeping of machines that were both keeping him alive and underscoring his fragility. The official story was a severe reaction to a tainted drug, a tragic accident. But Brooklyn Quartermain knew, in the deepest part of her soul, that it was a lie. She rarely left his side, her hand often clutching his, her voice a steady, reassuring murmur against the mechanical chorus of the room. "You have to fight, Chase. Come back to me. We have a wedding to plan. A life to live." Her words were a prayer, an incantation against the darkness that threatened to claim him. The key to that darkness was now in the possession of Finn Hamilton. The vial of tainted medication he had confiscated from Chase's apartment sat in his lab, a silent accuser. His initial tests had confirmed the presence of a foreign, highly toxic substance. But identifying it was one thing, proving it was intentionally administered was another. The source was clear, the medication had come from Gregory Chase's personal supply, medication that Finn himself had helped manage. This realization cast a long, accusatory shadow over Gregory. The elder Chase, grappling with the relentless progression of his ALS, was consumed by a guilt so profound it was physically painful. He sat in his study, the empty pill bottle a heavy weight in his trembling hand. "I would never. I couldn't," he whispered to the empty room, his voice a ragged tear. But doubt, that most insidious of poisons, had already seeped in. Had he, in a fog of confusion and pain, mixed up the medications? Had his own deteriorating body been the weapon that felled his son? Tracy Quartermain, witnessing Gregory's torment, became a fierce, if unlikely, ally. "Don't you dare take the blame for this, Gregory Chase," she admonished him, her sharp tone belying the concern in her eyes. "This was done to you. To both of you. Someone is playing a very sick game, and we are going to find out who." Her conviction fueled Finn's resolve. He worked tirelessly in his lab, his focus absolute. He knew the compound was rare, synthetic. It wasn't something one just stumbled upon. This was a chemist's weapon. And that line of thinking led him down a dangerous path, back to a name he had tried to forget, Caleb Temple. A memory, a ghost from his past. But was it just a memory? Or was someone resurrecting his oldest, most terrifying demons? As the Chase family drama unfolded in hushed, agonized tones, the Corinthos family was dealing with a threat of a more public, corporate nature. Michael Corinthos sat behind the imposing desk at ELQ, staring at a preliminary financial report. The numbers weren't just bad, they were catastrophic. A series of bad investments, coupled with the sudden devaluation of a key international asset, had left the company hemorrhaging money. "This can't be right," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "We had safeguards. Diversification. This looks targeted." His words would prove prophetic. The bad investments were traced back to a shell corporation, one with a deliberately obscured paper trail. But Michael, with the help of his cunning and resourceful wife, Willow, began to pull at the threads. The shell corporation led to a holding company, which was linked to a trust fund based in Zurich. And the name associated with that trust fund, the beneficiary of ELQ's downfall, sent a chill down Michael's spine, Cyrus Renault. Though Cyrus remained behind bars, his influence was clearly not contained by prison walls. He was orchestrating a hostile takeover from his cell, using proxies and laundered money to systematically dismantle the company that represented the Corinthos family's legitimacy. This wasn't a physical attack, it was an economic siege, designed to destroy Sonny's empire from the inside out, to leave his family destitute and powerless. Sonny Corinthos, when informed, reacted not with panic, but with a cold, simmering rage. "Cyrus wants a war? He'll get one. But not on the streets. We'll fight him with his own weapons." He turned to Michael, a new respect in his eyes. "You're in charge of this, Michael. Use everything at your disposal. Dex Heller, your contacts at the invader. We need to find his weak spot, the person on the outside he's trusting to do this." This corporate battle created a ripple effect, putting Drew Kane in an impossible position. As a member of the ELQ board, his fiduciary duty was to the company and its shareholders. But his loyalty to Carly, and by extension to Sonny and Michael, pulled him in another direction. Some of the maneuvers Michael proposed were borderline unethical, skirting the edges of legality. "Michael, if we do this, we're no better than he is," Drew argued during a tense meeting in the ELQ office. "We could be exposing the company to even greater liability, not to mention SEC investigations. We don't have the luxury of playing it safe, Drew." Michael shot back, his frustration boiling over. "This is a calculated attack. If we don't fight fire with fire, there won't be an ELQ left to save. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty." The conflict strained their recently repaired relationship, with Carly caught squarely in the middle. She understood Drew's principled stance, but her maternal instincts and her fierce protectiveness of her family aligned with Michael's desperation. "Drew, please," she pleaded with him privately. "We can't let Cyrus win. Not like this." Amidst these high-stakes battles of law and finance, a quieter, more intimate drama was reaching its climax. Elizabeth Baldwin, having finally confessed the truth about her baby's paternity to Hamilton Finn, found herself navigating the fragile early days of a new understanding. Finn, though hurt by the deception, was a man who understood crisis and redemption. His primary focus was on supporting her. But the shadow of the baby's biological father, Jake Weber, loomed large. Jake, young and reckless, was struggling with the monumental reality of impending fatherhood. His initial reaction had been one of panic and denial, but as the days passed, a sense of responsibility began to take root, albeit a clumsy and fearful one. He sought out Elizabeth at the hospital, finding her during a quiet moment in the nurse's station. "Liz. I've been thinking," he began, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "I know I messed up. I know I've been a jerk. But I want to be there. For the baby. I don't know how, but I want to try." Elizabeth studied the face of the boy she had watched grow up, now the man who was tied to her forever. Her heart ached for him, for the weight she saw in his young eyes. "It's not about trying, Jake. It's about doing. This child will need you. Not just sometimes. Always." The situation was further complicated by the presence of Charlotte Cassadine. The troubled young woman, who had once seen Jake as her sole refuge, viewed the pregnancy as the ultimate betrayal. Her obsession, which had previously manifested in subtle manipulations, began to curdle into something darker and more dangerous. She watched Jake's attempts at maturity with a burning jealousy, convinced that Elizabeth and the baby were stealing her future. She began making subtle, threatening remarks to Liz, veiled as concern. "Are you sure you're up for this, Elizabeth? A baby is such a huge responsibility. And with your history, well, it must be so stressful." Laura Collins, ever the perceptive mayor and matriarch, noticed the shift in her granddaughter. She tried to reach out, to pull Charlotte back from the brink. "Darling, you have to let Jake live his life. This obsession is unhealthy. It's going to destroy you." But Charlotte, feeling isolated and misunderstood, only retreated further, her mind concocting schemes to remove the obstacle she believed was ruining her life. As the calendar turned from November to December, the stakes in every storyline were raised to a fever pitch. The week of December 1st began with a legal earthquake. Diane Miller, in a dramatic pretrial hearing, presented new evidence, security footage from a camera a block away from the docks, time-stamped for the night of the murder. The footage, though grainy, clearly showed Jason's car driving in the opposite direction at the exact time the crime was committed. It was an ironclad alibi. The judge had no choice but to dismiss all charges. Jason Morgan was a free man. The moment he walked out of the police station, the cool December air hitting his face, he wasn't filled with relief, but with a cold, focused fury. He looked at Sam, at Dante, at the small crowd that had gathered. "Someone went to a lot of trouble to put me in there," he said, his voice quiet but lethal. "Now it's my turn to return the favor." His first stop was not home, but the Metro Court pool. Sonny was waiting for him. The two men, the pillars of a fractured empire, stood in silence for a long moment. "Cyrus," Sonny finally said, the name a curse. "It has to be. He's trying to divide our attention, keep us off balance while he goes after ELQ." Jason nodded. "Then we stop playing defense." The hunt was on. Their investigation, aided by Dex's off-the-books legwork, began to zero in on Cyrus's network. They identified a mid-level enforcer, a man named Leo, who was known to handle Cyrus's outside communications. He was the key. The plan was simple: find Leo, and make him talk. Simultaneously, the medical mystery surrounding Harrison Chase took a shocking turn. Finn, working through the night in his lab, finally isolated the unique chemical signature of the toxin. It was a synthetic analog of a rare plant-based alkaloid, one he had only ever encountered in the research of his late, disgraced mentor, a man whose work had been co-opted and weaponized by Caleb Temple. The connection was undeniable. This wasn't a random act, it was a message. A signature. But the question remained, who in Port Charles had the knowledge and the motive to use it? The obvious suspect was Gregory, but Finn had now ruled him out scientifically. The compound was too complex for a non-chemist to synthesize. The list of suspects was short and terrifying. It pointed to someone with a deep, personal grudge against Finn, someone who wanted to destroy him by making him witness the death of a patient, a friend, a brother, by a poison that echoed the worst trauma of his life. The emotional toll was immense. Brooklyn, sleep-deprived and emotionally ravaged, finally broke down at Chase's bedside. "I can't lose you," she sobbed, her forehead resting on his still hand. "Do you hear me? You are not allowed to leave me. We are supposed to have decades together. You have to fight. In that moment of raw, desperate emotion, a miracle occurred. The steady beep of the heart monitor hitched. Then again. Brooklyn lifted her head, her breath catching. Chase's fingers twitched within her grasp. His eyelids fluttered. A soft, ragged breath escaped his lips, a sound more beautiful than any symphony. His eyes, clouded with confusion and pain, slowly opened. He was awake. The news spread through the hospital like a wildfire of hope. But his awakening was not an end, it was the beginning of a new, painful chapter. He was weak, disoriented, and the memory of the event was a fractured, terrifying jumble. The pills, he rasped, his voice a ghost of its former self. They were wrong. I knew, but I took them anyway. He couldn't identify who had given them to him, but he confirmed the crucial detail: the medication was not his. He had been given it, told it was for a persistent headache. The hunt for the would-be killer was now officially on. At ELQ, the corporate war escalated into open conflict. Michael and Willow, following the money trail Dex had uncovered, discovered that Cyrus's key lieutenant was none other than Martin Gray, the unassuming lawyer who had been lurking on the periphery of Port Charles society for years. Martin, it turned out, was not just a lawyer, he was Cyrus's half-brother, and he had been managing his brother's vast, hidden finances for decades. Confronted with the evidence in a tense meeting in Michael's office, Martin didn't deny it. Instead, he smiled, a cold, reptilian expression. You're cleverer than your father, Michael. I'll give you that. But you're too late. The votes are already in motion. A hostile takeover bid will be launched by the end of the week. ELQ will belong to my brother. This forced Drew Kane to make a choice. With the company facing an existential threat, his principles collided with his loyalties. In a stunning move, he sided with Michael. Using his own intelligence background and contacts from his time with the WSB, he devised a counter-strategy. It was aggressive, legally gray, and involved hacking into Martin's offshore accounts to uncover evidence of fraud and embezzlement that would not only sink the takeover bid but potentially send Martin to prison for a very long time. This is crossing a line, Drew, Michael said, a note of awe in his voice. Some lines are meant to be crossed when you're protecting your family, Drew replied, his gaze steady. He had chosen a side. The battle for ELQ was now a digital knife fight in the shadows, with the company's very soul as the prize. In the midst of this chaos, the fragile new beginning for Elizabeth and Finn faced its first major test. Jake, in a well-intentioned but disastrous attempt to prove his responsibility, bought a carload of baby supplies and had them delivered to Elizabeth's doorstep. The gesture, while generous, overwhelmed her. It was too much, too soon, and felt like an intrusion. Jake, this is too much, she said, trying to soften her words. We need to talk about this. We need a plan, not just things. Jake, feeling rejected, retreated. I can't do anything right. You and Finn have it all figured out. What do you need me for? His anger and insecurity made him a target for Charlotte's manipulations. She found him brooding at the Metro Court bar. They don't want you, Jake, she whispered, her voice dripping with false sympathy. They're a perfect little family now. You're just a complication. A sperm donor. This poisonous seed found fertile ground in Jake's wounded pride. He began to pull away, his commitment wavering once more. Elizabeth, seeing this, was heartbroken. She had hoped for a united front, but now faced the prospect of raising this child amidst conflict and resentment. Finn, ever the steady presence, urged patience. He's young, Liz. He's scared. Give him time. We'll figure this out, as a family. But the definition of that family was becoming more complicated by the day. The 2-week period hurtled towards its dramatic conclusion, with every storyline converging on a point of no return. Jason and Dex located Leo, the enforcer, in a grimy warehouse on the outskirts of town. The confrontation was brief and brutal. Jason, his movements efficient and lethal, subdued the man while Dex covered the exits. Who gave the order? Jason growled, his knee pressed into the man's back. Leo, coughing and terrified, gave up a name, but it was one that made no sense. It was a ghost, a persona non grata. But it was a start. It was the first real thread in the tapestry of Cyrus's conspiracy, and Jason began to pull. At the hospital, Chase's recovery was slow but steady. With Brooke Lynn by his side, his strength began to return. His first coherent sentence, spoken to Finn, was a vow. Find who did this. Finn, armed with Chase's confirmation and his own chemical analysis, knew the attacker was close, someone with access and knowledge. The list was short, and every name on it was a betrayal. The shadow of Caleb Temple stretched long, and Finn knew the final confrontation with this demon, whether real or imagined, was imminent. The ELQ takeover reached its climax on December 5th. As Martin Gray prepared to launch his final, decisive stock acquisition, Drew and Michael executed their countermove. Drew, using a backdoor he had created in the banking software, simultaneously froze Cyrus's and Martin's assets and leaked the evidence of embezzlement to the SEC, the FBI, and the Port Charles press. The fallout was instantaneous and devastating. Martin was arrested in his office, his cold smile finally wiped from his face. The takeover bid collapsed in a matter of hours. It was a victory, but a costly one. It had required Michael and Drew to embrace a ruthlessness they had once condemned. They had saved the company, but they had been changed in the process. The line between hero and villain, between Corinthos and Renault, had been irrevocably blurred. And in a quiet, terrifying coda, Charlotte Cassadine decided to take matters into her own hands. Believing that eliminating the source of Jake's distraction would make him hers again, she lured Elizabeth to the hospital's deserted rooftop garden under the pretense of an urgent, private conversation. As the wind whipped around them, Charlotte's demeanor shifted from pleading to unhinged. "You took him from me," she accused, her eyes wild. "You and that baby. He was supposed to be mine. If you were gone, if the baby was gone, he would see. He would come back to me." She advanced on a terrified Elizabeth, who backed away, her hands instinctively protecting her stomach. The edge of the roof was perilously close. It was a confrontation born of delusion and desperation, a violent end to a quiet obsession, poised to plunge two families into unimaginable grief. As the sun set on Port Charles on December 5th, the city was a landscape of Pyrrhic victories and looming threats. Jason was free but hunting a ghost. Chase was awake but targeted by an unseen chemist. ELQ was saved but its saviors were morally compromised. And on a windswept rooftop, one life hung in the balance, a stark reminder that in a world of corporate espionage and complex poisons, the most dangerous threats often came from a broken heart. The foundations had been shaken, alliances had been forged and broken, and the stage was set for an even more turbulent end to the year. The calm had been shattered, and the storm was just beginning. The next 2 weeks in Port Charles begin with a tense calm that doesn't last long, as the weight of secrets, fear, and long-buried emotions begins pressing on nearly every household. Anna stands in the dimly lit office at the PCPD, her shoulders rigid as she stares at the crime scene photos spread across her desk. "There's something here we're missing," she whispers to herself. Jordan steps in quietly, watching Anna's expression. "You're working yourself into a corner," Jordan says, her tone firm. Anna doesn't look up. This isn't just another case. Someone is making a move, and they're hiding in plain sight. Jordan exhales. "Then we're going to flush them out. But not if you fall apart first." Anna's jaw tightens, refusing to show how deeply this new threat has gotten under her skin. Meanwhile, Valentine stands outside the office door listening, knowing full well he's keeping information Anna desperately needs. His phone buzzes, and he turns away to answer. "I told you not to call this number," he mutters. The voice on the other end is calm, cold. "You'll deliver what I asked for. You don't want the past resurfacing." Valentine hangs up, almost shaking, and mutters, "Not again. Not this time." Across town, Carly is behind the counter at Kelly's, wiping down tables while trying to ignore the text messages piling up on her phone. She finally grabs it with a frustrated sigh. "I told you, Sonny, I'm not stepping back into that world," she says to herself. But Sonny walks in the door at that exact moment, catching the line. You don't get to decide that, he says quietly. Carly freezes, then turns with a hardened look. I absolutely do. I'm done being dragged into the messes you make. Sunny doesn't flinch. It's not my mess this time. It's somebody else's, and it's headed straight for us. Carly shakes her head. I'm running a diner, Sunny. That's it. Sunny's voice dips lower. And you think that keeps you safe? Carly pauses, realizing the truth in his tone. What happened? She asks. Sunny responds, someone new is in town. Someone who wants power, and they think the fastest way to get it is by blowing up everything connected to me. Carly's expression shifts from anger to fear, a fear she doesn't dare name. Sunny steps closer, gently. You don't have to forgive me. But you do need to listen. At GH, Finn is trying to focus on charts but can't shake his spiraling thoughts. His relapse continues to haunt him, especially as rumors begin circulating about the hospital board calling for a review. Elizabeth notices his shaking hands and steps in softly. Hey! You're not okay. Finn forces a smile. I'm just tired. Liz presses, you're lying to me. Finn tries to walk away, but Liz grabs his arm. If you fall apart, so does Violet. Talk to me. Finn closes his eyes. I slipped. Once. I swear it was once. Liz's face softens with heartbreak. Why didn't you call me? Finn mutters, because you've spent your whole life saving people. I'm tired of needing to be saved. Liz whispers back, let me choose to stay anyway. As their emotions swirl, Chase arrives with concern written all over his face. Finn, the board wants to meet with you in 2 days, he says. Finn's breath shortens. That's it. My career, my life, it's over. Chase grips his brother's shoulder. Not if we get ahead of it. We're family. We fight this together. Meanwhile, over at the Quartermain mansion, chaos brews as family tensions escalate before Thanksgiving. Lois paces the living room as Olivia tries to calm her down. Lois, honey, deep breaths. Lois snaps, deep breaths aren't going to fix this, Liv. Brooklyn enters, confused. What's going on? Lois throws her hands in the air. You tell her, Olivia. Olivia sighs. Tracy found out about the ELQ documents you signed for deception. Brooke's heart sinks. Oh no. Tracy storms in at that moment. Oh yes. She points a manicured finger at Brooke. You signed away Quartermain assets for a cosmetics brand? Brooke defends herself. I was helping a friend. Tracy fires back, you don't sell off family power for friendship. The room explodes into bickering voices until Ned walks in with a file folder. Everyone stop, he commands. The room falls silent. This is bigger than deception. Brooke looks at him nervously. Dad, what's going on? Ned's tone turns grim. There's someone acquiring small stakes all over Port Charles, ELQ, Aurora, even the Savoy. A silent takeover. Tracy's eyes narrow. Who the hell is behind it? Ned replies, we don't know. Yet. At the Metro Court, Sam and Dante are having breakfast together, but Sam can't shake the feeling that something terrible is coming. Dante lifts her chin gently. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. Sam shoots him a look. The last time we said that, we nearly died. Dante smirks. Okay, fair point. Sam leans in. I've been digging into that shipment that disappeared from the docks. It wasn't mob business. It was tech. Experimental. Dante's brows rise. From where? Sam whispers, WSB. Dante nearly chokes on his coffee. Sam. Don't. Sam shakes her head. Something is happening. And somebody wants this town distracted. Before Dante can respond, his phone buzzes. He stands quickly. It's Anna. She wants me at the station. Now. Sam mutters, see? Trouble. Ava, meanwhile, stands at her gallery staring at an empty space on the wall where a painting was once displayed. It doesn't just vanish, she growls. Jocelyn is nearby, nervous but trying not to show it. Ava, maybe you misplaced it? Ava glares. I don't misplace anything. Joss sighs. Okay, fair. But why steal a painting that wasn't worth much? Ava's eyes darken. Because the value wasn't in the art. It was in what was hidden inside the frame. Joss's mouth drops open. What does that even mean? Ava whispers more to herself than to Joss. It means someone knows more about my past than they should. She grabs her purse. I need to find Sunny. Joss follows. Ava, wait, what does that have to do with Sunny? Ava stops in the doorway. Everything. As the days progress, Port Charles braces for Thanksgiving with a sense of dread. In the Corinthos kitchen, Michael and Willow prepare pies together, trying to focus on normalcy. Willow smiles softly. We could actually have a quiet holiday this year. Michael raises an eyebrow. Willow. We live in Port Charles. Willow laughs. Okay, yeah, you're right. Her smile fades as she notices Michael staring out the window. What's wrong? Michael murmurs, I've been hearing chatter, someone is circling around Dad's territory. Someone dangerous. Willow's expression tightens with fear for Sunny, fear for their family, and fear for what this could unleash. She whispers, if it comes to war again, Michael pulls her in. Not this time. I won't let our family be collateral damage again. Nina, strolling through the Metro Court hallway, overhears this and stiffens. She goes back into her office and sinks into her chair. Not again, she says to herself. Martin walks in casually. You look like you've seen a ghost. Nina rubs her temples. A new power player is coming after Sunny. If a mob war starts, I lose everything I've rebuilt with my daughter. Martin tries to ease her fears. Nina, you can't control the world around Sunny. You can only protect what's yours. Nina sighs, then how do I do that without blowing up Michael's life again? Martin smirks. Very, very carefully. The second week begins with a growing sense that whatever threat is coming is about to make its move. Sunny receives a package delivered anonymously to his penthouse.